Hello, thank you for joining us for our seventh episode of the Cerulean Skies RPG podcast. This is a weekly podcast aimed at the myriad of RPG subjects that we here at Cerulean Skies are passionate about. So this always aims to be a mix of produced podcasting, live stream discussion, and just kind of chatting. So we always encourage folks to engage with these streams, whether it be in the live chat on Twitch, on Discord, or through other aspects of social media. Hit that at on Twitter, man. I'm your host, Joie, and today I'm joined by Mikhail
Hello?
and Schane.
Hello.
And you guys are new to this podcast, although, Mikhail, you have been on some Cerulean Skies and Super RPG Friend stuff, right?
The Cerulean Skies, yeah. I've hung around the Super RPG friends, but not on the content.
Oh, word. So yeah, well, glad to have you guys on here. It's going to be a lot of fun. And because y'all are new here, like we always do with new contributors to the show, we're going to be talking about some of your favorite RPGs to kind of gauge each other's preferences, get a little judgy, talk about what we like, what we don't like. And on top of that, on top of the regular format that we always employ, we're also going to be discussing what completing an RPG means to us. Are we 100%ers? Do we really need to do side content? Stuff like that. And, maybe we sound pretentious, or maybe completely unpretentious. We'll see. That will be up to the listeners to decide. But speaking of pretension, before we get started, again, you guys are new, so introduce yourselves. What do you do? Who is your daddy? And what might the internet know you for? Schane, we'll start with you.
At the moment, I'm mostly a streamer on twitch.tv. I stream with the missus, this is the better half, at twitch.tv/Roxas and Untamed. It's just both of our names spelt out. Or you can follow me on the Bird app at Roxas Your Boxes. You are Boxes. I don't know if I need to specify that, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Oh yeah. And Mikhail, how about you?
Well, I'm Mikhail. I'm kind of this all-around type person, really. I do a lot of, office work, tech work, that sort of thing. As far as the internet goes, I don't really have this large footprint there. I've been around a lot of smaller communities, forums, discords. Uh, Really, the only thing that kind of stands out might be my Twitter, where I do pretty infrequent pixel art.
Hell yeah. And your pixel art, I talked to you about this in the chat yesterday, but your pixel art slaps, dude. So
Yeah, thanks.
really recommend checking out his stuff. You made a tree like a couple weeks ago, and I was like, that's
Mhm.
a fucking tree, man.
Yeah.
That is a tree. Do you do any like have you ever done pixel art for a project or anything like on, I guess, like on a bigger setting than just for a hobby?
Uh, I wouldn't say like that so much, no. It really started with, say, what was it? It might have been RPG Maker like 95 or something like that, editing all the sprites, that's the kind of thing. So,
Oh yeah. Um awesome. Yeah, so that is these guys, and that's it. We're done. Just check out their social media. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. But no, we're gonna be talking. So, like I said in the intro, we do try to talk about some of our favorite RPGs first, just to get some conversation flowing, and wait for my internet to decide that it wants to die tonight. So, Mikhail, we'll start with you for this one, man. What are some of your favorite RPGs?
all right. Definitely that most complicated question you could ever ask me. So I really fall into this kind of feeling where either I'm really old or I'm really into niche games. There's a lot of old games that end up being my favorite, like from the Super Nintendo, Terranigma, a game called Brain Lord, which everybody makes fun of the name because why wouldn't you? It has nothing to do with the story or game at all either. But also games like Landstalker, Skies of Arcadia, and even newer RPGs like Crystal Project, which I highly recommend for anyone into that. You want to manipulate the turn order during the rounds kind of thing. Um, but then there's also series like Atrian Odyssey. Brandish is a big one that I've brought up a few times in the Discord. Also, some computer RPGs like Ultima and Might and Magic. Those were very big for me growing up.
That's a stacked list, and I have not played Crystal Project, but that sounds interesting. It's on my Steam list.
Right. It's a very neat mix of it's got that turn-based battle. When you're not in battle, it's almost a 3D platformer.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it
See,
looks
when
really cool.
based on the description, I was thinking of the game Transistor, but I don't know if that's anywhere near what that is like.
No, no. This it's that turn-based RPG kind of turn manipulation. So there's a round, everybody gets their one turn, but you get to manipulate as far as, your speed. You can cause the enemy to go slower or completely miss their turn, that kind of thing.
Okay, I'm thinking like Bravely
That's
Default
what I thought.
now.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah, when he said turn order, I was like, my mind went to Four Heroes of Light or Bravely Default. So, what about you, Shane? What are some of your favorite games, man?
So mine changes like all the time, and I'm not probably going to name half of the niche ones that you've named. Like I haven't even heard of Brainlord. That sounds, and it has nothing to do with being a brain or a lord.
No, not at all.
No.
I mean, like my grandpa started me with Final Fantasy 1, and of course, like as I grew up more and more, like I followed Final Fantasy and SquareSoft in general, so it was like Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, 9, Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross. Basically, I just became like a brand whore for Squaresoft until it got to a point where I had to start branching out to other things like Legend of Dragoon and whatnot. But as of right now, my favorite JRPG of all time is probably Romancing Saga 2 because it left such
Ooh.
a huge impact on me. I never played it until I think it was a year or two ago when the remaster of it came out, but yeah, it left such an impact that it's definitely the game that I keep thinking about.
Hell yeah.
That yeah, that's it wasn't one of my favorites when I first played it. I wasn't so much into it on the Super Nintendo, but that remaster that came out, it definitely fixed kind of the issues I felt like I had with the original.
So I never played the original. What are the differences between that one and the new one?
I would
Mostly
say,
quality of life, right? Like
yeah,
that's the biggest thing. You outfitting your new generations is a little easier with the remake. You have the new game plus thing, obviously that the remaster. Did I just say remake? I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I just if you guys are watching the VOD or if you're watching the Twitch video, I had like an allergy attack in real life. So I'm glad that you know that's documented. But but yeah, so little things like that. There's a couple. The bonus dungeon, the remaster added just
Yeah,
some bug fixes, things like
that
that.
one was obvious. Like the bonus dungeon. There was no new game plus in the original version. You had to
Mhm.
restart every time.
Yep. The same with Saga
Wow.
Frontier and RS3
I
as well.
I do know Frontier didn't allow you to carry the content over, which thank God they did. But yeah, I can't imagine not being able to restart with some stuff in Romancing Saga 2.
Yeah. That's why I always recommend starting. Like, if you're gonna play the remasters of the Saga games, start with the remaster. Or if you're gonna play Saga games, start with the remaster, because they're kind of like designed to not screw you over in the same way that the originals were. So yeah, it makes like if you get stuck, if you hit something that's like really difficult or you're under level 4 or over level 4, you always have that like eject button, but you didn't have that before. I think
Yeah.
some of the sparking stuff got changed a little bit in the remaster, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I never played those games originally. I played a little bit of RS3 in an emulator in like 2003, and I never really played any other Saga game besides Frontier 1 and 2, and I guess the Game Boy ones until the
The
remaster.
original Saga series.
And they were so different that like it wasn't really the same. It didn't feel like the same kind of game. It was a lot more like traditionally based. And
So,
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, well, no, just the kind of the funny thing here too, like you saying that's your favorite, and that's the only one that I still own, like the actual, like still have the cart and box and everything for is the second Romancing Saga.
Oh man, that's a beautiful little box art too. All the Saga
Hmm.
games have amazing box art. Like
I
Yeah.
love
oh,
Saga art.
it's
Even
so
in
good.
general, I would say the Super Nintendo, well, Super Famicom box arts were just so much better than everything else at the time.
Dude, it's like this the perfect size because I think the Super Nintendo boxes are a little too big, but like Super Famicom boxes like they're just like they look like VHS tapes or I think they're a little
Hmm.
smaller, right? Like the even than a
Yeah, they're
VHS
like a
tape.
little thinner. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. I think I out of anyone I follow, I think I have the biggest Saga collection. I have like every game, the Millennium stuff, a bunch of the CD set, a bunch of shit. So maybe one day I will post that. It's my collection posting. A lot of really cool stuff that we did not get in the U.S., especially box art, because I guess the U.S. box art designs are like, I guess they were allergic to illustrations because
Oh,
so
the US box art was like horizontal as well, if I remember, and the Japanese ones they're like vertical. I remember
yeah,
Secret of Mana had
yeah.
like a
Yeah.
beautiful like tree
Mm-hmm.
in Japan, and then the one that we got was the same image, but they cut the whole
The
top of it
whole
off.
yeah, yeah, and I still like the Super Nintendo box art because it puts the little pink birds in perspective a little bit more.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, this is a box art stream. We're just gonna be your tag is now Roxas your box art. So I'm
Box
a
art.
big and speaking of your name, I assume that you're not a Kingdom Hearts fan at all with
Oh,
that name.
I didn't even bring that up. Kingdom Hearts 2 is like one of my favorite games from the PS2 generation until almost the PS4 generation. So, yeah, a lot of inspiration from that series. Mind you, I'm not a huge fan of some of the direction it's going in, but Kingdom Hearts 2 will always be like one of the number one games to me.
So that's a good uh an interesting thing to hear. What like eclipsed it for you because you said it was until PS4. So what was the game or some games that he started to challenge Kingdom Hearts 2 for you?
Oh, there was just so many good things that came out. Like I think I don't know if I brought it up, but like I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VII, but remake like really did something for me. Although it was like a deep dive and it was only a small portion of the content, they they brought back one of my most favorite things about Final Fantasy, which is like every character has a job and a role to play. So like Barrett could only hit the aerial targets, Cloud was
Right.
like your big heavy damage dealer. So like even though they still had a materia system, every character wasn't like a cut copy that you could make into anything you wanted anymore. They still had specialized tasks that they could do. But I mean like just so many great games came out on during the PS4 era. The Messenger, we're getting
Messenger's good.
an
Hmm.
RPG sequel to that next year, Sea of Stars, or is it a prequel? I'm not sure now.
I think they said it was like a prequel. It's supposed
Yeah,
to take place like 1,000 or thousands of years before the Messenger's story
but like
happened. But
I was already so impressed by the Messenger, and now they're telling me that it's going to be like Final Fantasy, but the Messenger. So like super excited for that one. But yeah, just so many great games. Like I don't know if you can see half the collection over here, but I mean like Yakuza's Like a Dragon was another game that really hit home for me for RPGs. Elden Ring, which came out this year. Like, God, I could go through a list and a half.
Yeah, no, I
But
think God, this year has been pretty insane, both with like new games and remasters too. So
That does like bring to mind the whole thing. What it like? So this has kind of been like a year of Square Enix. Then is what we're getting at. All these games are coming out with, and I almost feel like a lot of that has to deal with COVID. Then just things getting delayed, things that just maybe they weren't able to do, even as far as, hey, we didn't make enough money. We want to push all these games out like sooner rather than later.
yeah, and there were a lot of solstices in here just waiting. He's like, yeah, I will speak. But there were a lot of like double A titles that they released. Diofield, Valkyrie Elysium, even Star Ocean. I think I would put in the double A. And holy shit, that comes out in a week, man.
Yep.
Ocean
That's
6.
uh-huh.
I'm kind of like hit or miss with Star Ocean as a series. Like, I never played the first one. I did play Second Story. Absolutely loved it. I'm one of the if there's a giant division with Star Ocean 3, I'm on the negative side of that. Anything that goes like into meta territory, I found the big reveal. I don't know if we can talk about spoilers for a
You
game
can talk
that's
about spoilers, yeah.
like PS2 era, but the one of the biggest like reveals in Star Ocean 3 was uh everything that the characters knew was like part of a giant MMO, and
Yeah.
they broke free of it. And then the thing is, once you make a reveal like that, when Star Ocean 4, 5, and 6 comes out, I'm like, what's my investment in a bunch of
Yeah.
NPCs trying to live their lives
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, and I think, man, the way I like to see it is that it's just like an AR, right? Like an alternate reality, sort
Yeah.
of. And I think that that's cool. And but even then, like those games, even with that kind of reveal, and I talk about this all the time, but I feel like when developers make games in a series like that, it's never so closely tied up in the canon of the other games that like it feels rigid and forced, right? Because they're just making these games as they sort of come along. Maybe they have ideas for another game in a series later down the line, but it doesn't really like become its own thing until later. um you see this a lot with the Ease series, and I mention Ease because I know Mikhail is a fan of
Hmm.
Ease 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is him. It's the only one. He's
Yeah.
the only one.
Well, and it's also that it gets into the whole like genre mix there. It's that, I've got a love for Metroidvanias, and this is basically a old Metroidvania. But outside of, that sort of thing, outside of maybe, the music, I agree with all the flaws of the game.
There's a man. I also bring this up because we were talking about Star Ocean, so it automatically triggered my flawed senses, like divisive senses. I think, and I think Saga is kind of like that too. Honestly, I could only imagine what the reception was to Romancing Saga in the time before the internet. Like, imagine if that game had come out in the West. I think it would have been panned like hardcore. Like it's wild. So, is it Star Ocean's time? Is it time for Star Ocean to do some good in the world, folks? What do you think?
Do you
I mean,
guys think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I've been hearing a lot of good as far as what people are seeing and maybe not expecting, but hoping for out of the newest one.
Yeah. Well, Shane, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, 5 kind of restored my faith a little bit in Star Ocean. I thought 4
The
was
only one.
I thought 4 was like a travesty. I thought 3 was a travesty. 2 I thought was great, but then 5 they kind of like stuck to one planet and one singular story, and it was just a little bit better from a storytelling perspective to me. So I'm hoping 6 kind of keeps that up, but we'll see.
Solstice asked a really good question to you, Shane. He asked, "Are you sure you're not getting 4 and 5 mixed up?"
4 and 5. I
Yeah,
heard so I remember 4 being it almost like ending as soon as it started. It felt like the content in it was not a great deal. Now, that's not speaking from a trophy hunting
Oh
perspective
yeah, yeah,
because they just made that game too insane. I gave up with that one.
Mhm.
dude, that's
But
the sweatiest platinum I have, I think.
oh, you did it.
Yeah, that might on 360, so 1,000. But I just call that a platinum. I don't know.
Wow. Does it really actually take 1,000 hours?
It took about probably 300 plus hours. I did it over the course of the summer into the fall when I was like very depressed. I also did this with Oblivion during this around the same time. So, that's just what happens when you get sad. You platinum a game that's dubious quality.
I don't think I could ever sit through that much Star Ocean 4. Now, I heard like the combat in Star Ocean 4 is great, but I found it was very lacking in a lot of other departments. I don't know what it is about 5. I just like I liked how it was a little more simplistic and it didn't try to overcomplicate things by throwing too much sci-fi at you. It felt more like it leaned into the primitiveness of the planet, so to speak.
Oh, man, so I know. Well, actually, I'm gonna hand the torch to Mikhail because he's coming for you. I think.
Am I?
Oh.
Are you?
Well,
Are you?
So my experience with Star Ocean, I really enjoyed, 1, 2, and 3, and then I didn't get into 4, and I didn't get into 5, and a lot of that, does go into the whole trophy hunting and completionist, and around that time, like RPGs, I got burnt out like really bad because of that, and I stopped RPGs for like a few years because I just didn't want to have to pull up this guide, didn't want to have to replay a game if I didn't want it spoiled for me, that, whole thing.
So
Um,
the trophies prevented you from enjoying the game more?
like wanting to get the trophies, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
That's a
like if I had just
really good
ignored the
segue.
trophies, it's like I would have played the game, I might have enjoyed it, but
Ah,
having to basically plan out how am I going to play this game, like that wasn't a whole lot of fun for me.
that's such an interesting topic, and it's exactly the kind of thing I wanted to get into. I'm so glad you said that, dude. That's so good.
nice
Yeah.
segue.
Nice segue. Yeah. So let's use that. Let's go with that. It's organic. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point because I kind of did this with Romancing Saga 2. And I'll give my example and then I'll pass it to you guys to kind of analyze. But because I played through Romancing Saga 3 and I remember I was like, I liked it a lot. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get the platinum for this. And I did. And then I went to Romancing Saga 2 and I was like, okay, I know what to expect. I know this game is going to be super esoteric. Looked up a bunch of guides, which there really aren't as many good ones for RS2 as 3.
I think 2 only had one good one and you had to follow it to a T.
Yeah. And, oh, you know what? Actually, I say this, but like a couple months ago, the guy who did that Romancing Saga 3 website thing did one for RS2. So now there is that. So all you fucking new jacks, you get the benefit of this right here. Yeah, but so I was planning that out and and I was like basically what Mikhail was talking about like having to plan out the game without spoiling it for yourself, the extra effort that I intrinsically wanted to make with that game, right? And I mean, is that kind of your fault for putting those conditions on how you want to play the game? Yes, a little bit because it was with me. And I did that with Saga Scarlet Grace a little bit too, but I cannot do that for every game. If I did that for every game, it would feel like I already have Excel open or sheets open at all times. I would just feel like it would be a permanently burned into my monitor if I did. And it's just like at that point it would become exhausting. And I think a lot of these newer RPGs are almost made to circumvent that, right? Like Valkyrie Elysium, even Field, very straightforward game. And maybe not Tactics Ogre or Triangle Strategy, but at the same time, Triangle Strategy does tell you that like there's different paths, right? Like that's the case. So I could see that game maybe kind of being in the middle. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good subject. So what made you relapse? Because obviously you're playing RPGs now.
Right.
So
Well,
what
and
did
then
it?
so I've kind of gone through all the different phases, like of what I want out of, a game. And at this point, I just play to play. I might not even finish this game, but I'm going to get something out of it. I'm going to get some sort of experience out of it.
Right. And I think that's the way, man. And Shane, what about you? What is your opinion on the trophies blocked my enjoyment of the game
Um,
point of discourse?
so I will let a game abuse me, no problem. If I have to beat a game like 2 to 3 times, so hold on before I get too far into this. I'm not above looking up what a trophy guide says at the very start of it, because what I'm always
Same.
looking for is missables. If there's
Same.
something that's missable,
Mhm.
then I will focus fire that. If I go on to a trophy guide and it says nothing's missable, don't worry about it. Like Tales of Arise, which I haven't played yet. I heard it's great. I own it. It's here. It's right to the right of me. But I heard that absolutely nothing's missable in it. So when I do finally get around to that game, I'm just going to sit back, ease out, and enjoy it. And then whatever happens, happens. And then when I'm at the end of it, finish it. It's all good. There's certain games that, like, even if I know they're going to be hard, or if I know that I'm not going to be able to platinum them, I I wouldn't miss them for the world. So when Devil May Cry 5 came out, which isn't a RPG, but notoriously hard game, I was like, I doubt I'll be able to platinum it, but I'm going to go into this. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. I love Devil May Cry. And then when I beat it, I was like, wait, I think this might be doable, is what I decided, right? And then I fought for it and I got it. So that's like a sign of like one that I didn't think I'd be able to get, and I did. And then another example would be a game that beat me.
Hmm.
Tales of Zestiria
Oh
is
yeah, I
the
heard
one
about
that
this.
I want to bring up. So like, I beat the game twice. It's a very, very lengthy game. The maps are gigantic, but the whole world is kind of devoid of people, like, whatsoever. Um, Not very interesting to replay over and over again. And if you want to get the platinum the easiest way possible, you've got to like beat the game 5 times to be strong enough to fight the final boss legitimately. Or you can do these cheese methods, which I was never able to do. And then I sat there after I beat it the second time and I said, you know what, this is not worth it to me. So there will be times
Rock
where
it.
I'll hit it, like I'll hit a brick wall and I'll be like, you really got to sit there and value how much of your time do you want to dedicate to getting that that platinum, or would you rather move on to something that you might actually enjoy a little more?
Yeah,
But
it's
Mhm.
funny because you mentioned Tales because I did that with Vesperia, the remaster, because I played the original when it first came out, and I like Vesperia. It's one of my favorite Tales games, and I remember I was replaying it on PS4 like maybe a year or a year and a half ago, and I hit the same thing. I was like 3/4 of the way through the story. I'm like, bro, I gotta play this game 4 more times. Do I really want to do it? And it's like,
yeah,
and you know what? I'm okay with that. I think, I'm not one of those people who are so obsessive about trophies that I need to have 100% on everything because I have too many games. I would end myself at that point because, like, I would just stop playing games. It would ruin my experience. And, like, back in the 360 ages when achievements really first started taking off, or that concept really first started taking off, I was a lot more adamant about it because I could afford one game every 3 months or whatever, right? So I would sit
Right.
there and I would scrimble the hell out of it. I would 100% Star Ocean 4, like stupid shit like that. Like, but I couldn't do that. Like, I would not do 100% Star Ocean 4 in the year of our Lord 2022. Like, it's just, there's too many games I could be playing. And
yeah.
so it's like, but you touched on something that really, I feel like also Mikhail might relate to a lot. And it's the concept of missables, right? I hate
Yeah.
missing shit. I hate it. I need
Well,
it
and we're
all.
talking about the 360 era and these achievements, and that's what all these RPGs had. They were filled with all these missables. Tales of Vesperia, every basically boss had this hidden achievement of you
Yep.
had to do something during that fight. And if
Mhm.
you didn't do it, well, you missed that achievement for that playthrough.
Yeah, and I like that idea so much though. Right? Like I think that's such a cool concept. The only thing is that like it dictates like if you really want to get everything,
Mhm.
it really does put a strain on you in a lot of ways. And man, I don't know because it's like at one point you can just be like, bro, just chill, just fucking just chill, like eat an edible, play your tails, who cares? But at the same time, I don't know, man. That's kind of a big thing I derive enjoyment from is just the full experience, right? Doing
Mhm.
all those things. It's something that I personally am really into. I don't do it with every game, but like I like that because I feel like that's a different sphere of experience, right? And that's the one that I gravitate towards. So yeah,
Well,
what? So
so
yeah, go. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say one of another experience of mine with this and 360 area was Lost Odyssey.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know, if you've experienced the achievements and what you need to do with that, but it was basically find, every single
every I
random
yep.
hidden item. So trying to play that game, I would have a walkthrough up. It's like as best I could not to spoil myself, but here's, the items, that sort of thing. And I never finished it. And when I went back a few months ago, I've got a, what is it? Series X now, which okay, backwards compatible, I think, if I recall correctly.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I loaded it up on that. I saw here's my save, and how did I get this far in the game? I don't even remember getting this far because my experience was, that I don't want to say tarnished by collecting all this stuff, but that influenced where I just don't even remember most of the game.
Interesting.
So
So you were focused on the goal? Like you were focused so much on the goal that it sort of
Yeah,
eclipsed
that I just
your
lost track of most of the story that I experienced.
interesting. Sorry, so you were gonna say something?
yeah, just out of curiosity, like I love trophy hunting
Mhm.
probably more than the average person, but like you said that you gave up playing Star Ocean games because of the complexity of the trophies, right? Or like
Yeah.
how obsessive you get over them. Surely, like, did you ever have a game that you were like, I wouldn't miss this for the world? Damn the trophies. Like there must
That's
have
a good
been one
question.
game that came out around the corner that was like, I'm not gonna miss this. I don't care if I can't get the platinum for it. This is the one that I want. Did
I
that
mean,
happen?
I'm sure there were some. Like at the time, like that was my big thing was I was just playing games and if I could get all the trophies without spending, 100 hours, like okay, then I'm gonna get all the trophies or that kind of thing. And I did play games just to enjoy them. Um, so it was, both at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah, I
I'm just trying to like I'm just trying to think if Final Fantasy 16 came out, I wouldn't want to ever miss it. And if they said that
Mhm.
only 0.0001% of people will ever get the platinum because it's so difficult, it still wouldn't knock me off playing it. Like
Right.
I would it's just one of those things where it doesn't matter if I can't finish it. It's going to be one of the ones that I won't miss.
Mhm.
and
And I
uh
yeah, and now, nowadays it's like I just play to play. If I get there's games on Steam, I'll get into it like, oh, I need four more achievements to get all of them. It's just going to be another hour or two. I'll do that.
yeah, I think you brought up a really good point too that I'm gonna quickly use as an aside, and it's you know making a 100% or a platinum that's so difficult that literally five people in like Bosnia only have, right? Like I don't know why I chose Bosnia. I'm not coming for Bosnia, I swear to God. Y'all are great. Um but I like that a lot because I think it pulls me in, it engages, it challenges me in a way. And if I really liked FF16, I would probably try to get it. I did that with Super Meat Boy. I was like, I'm gonna get this platinum. I'm gonna
Did you
do it.
get it?
I
Did you
did.
get it?
Yeah,
You
that took
did?
me like 3 weeks of constant practice every day. I'd come
That
home
sounds
from
crazy.
class and I'd be like, okay, all right. I'm gonna.
So,
Yeah, I put on
you know,
Fugazi.
good.
That's all I need. That was my way to deal with it. So
So, Solstice did remind me here, mentioning the craft list and Summon Night. Not Summon Night, but Dragon Quest XI, I think, was the last game that I've really gone full on, almost 100% for. I
like with
did.
the accolades and stuff, or the
Um,
achievements.
I played it on the Switch, so it was like
Oh, okay.
when
Oh,
that version
accolades.
came
Yeah.
out. Um, I think I needed maybe 5 more of the craft, like the crafting thing, like the full stars on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
craft. I needed maybe 5 more out of like the entire list. I had, I think, maybe 50 of the like accolades or whatever to go when I finally stopped, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the only one of the there's a couple I didn't get. One of them was like beating it with all the draconian quests on. I'm like, no,
Right.
no, one of those that's annoying as shit. Absolutely not. Um,
Uh,
that was a
but it did
deep
also,
100%.
yeah. I mean, that it was well over, well, it was well over 100 hours. But again, at the time, it's okay. Here's Persona 5, which you're just playing the game and it's over 100 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it does remind me too that you know we're talking about trophy hunting and achievement hunting, that sort of thing, and those aren't always 100% either of a game,
Mm-hmm.
especially in RPG.
Yes, that's a. You're so fucking good at segues, dude. You should do this more often. Um, that brings me to the fundamental question at hand here. And what does it mean to complete an RPG to you guys? Mikhail, I'll let because you dropped that lovely breadcrumb. I'll let you answer it.
Well, for me now, it's really that most of the time it's going to be the story content. It's going to be getting to the final credits. And I like to say final credits because I know a lot of the time, you bring up a game like
You
Nier,
Mhm.
and I've known people that it's like, I got ending A and I'm done with the game. And that's not the end.
Nope.
You
Um,
don't do that. The game
Got
even
four
tells you.
more.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, cool. I like that. That's a good answer. It's very succinct. It's to the point. You know. And Shane, what about you? And your answer could be as abstract as you want it to be.
You know what? I'm gonna like agree with Mikhail. It's mostly what you make of it. I think rolling credits, the final credits, is the best. Like that's the intended experience. Even trophy hunting gets like off in the reeds. I'm playing a game right now called Knights of Azure, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
I rolled the credits on that game. I beat the optional bosses. I got the secret true ending, and I still have trophies that are like, you need to do 100 more side quests. You need to do 300 more side quests. You need to kill 10,000 enemies. And the last check was 500 enemies. And I'm like, I completed everything this game wants me to do, but now I'm just sitting
Yeah.
here plugging
Yeah.
hours and hours into what is essentially nothing. Like there's nothing new being thrown at me. So I would consider that game done, but until I see that platinum trophy pop, like for me this game isn't done. But mind you, like I said, if it gets too abusive, I will move on from it. Like if I have to spend 1,000 hours doing something,
Yeah.
nobody's got that kind of time.
Yeah, and
I'm
I
not.
think Star Ocean 4 was that. Exactly what you're
Yes.
talking about. Like but I was thinking about this. I asked whenever I like think about a topic for these podcasts, I usually um ask my girlfriend and I'm like, "Oh, what do you think this means to you or whatever?" And then I'm kind of thinking about, the general flow of the subtopic or whatever. And I think you said this, both of you guys said this, and you said like completing an RPG, and I'm specifically talking about RPGs here, and maybe not all games, because it just for clarity and focus. But a lot of people will say, and you guys did, that completing an RPG means the intent of the story has sunken or been explored, or AKA you hit the end credits, you saw the climax, the resolution, the 3 act, whatever. Um, but what about gameplay mechanics, right? Like, because you could beat a game and okay, so like, what's a really good example of this? FF13. you could beat that game without ever really understanding the battle system. You could beat Dragon Quest 11 even without really understanding the battle system. Valkyrie Profile. There's a few other examples that I can't think of right now, but
FF10.
FF10's that's a really good one because you could beat
Yeah.
that game without doing all the horrendous side quests, and it's still really
Dark
easy.
Aeons, hidden dungeons, penance.
Right. And so it's like, okay, the way I try to, I guess, illustrate it is, you beat FF10, you see the story, and then you just kind of just play the critical path. What you've seen in the gameplay is like getting 30% through the story and quitting. Like that's the gameplay equivalent of the story, right? So I feel like that's something to be said too, because I mean, I'm definitely a more of a gameplay over story person. I think the sweet spot is the synthesis of the two. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say the L word. I'm gonna say the fucking L word. It's the Ludo narrative. But I mean that's important. But like generally, I think people sometimes skimp on gameplay like analysis to the degree that they analyze a story or plot or characters or whatever. And I think that maybe that there's like an injustice there. So I feel like if you say that like your goal in playing an RPG is to just get to the end of the story, to see this story, you're using story as an end game. Not you personally, not you guys personally. I just think it's like an interesting thing to think about. But and I find that kind of funny because I feel like it's interesting because it's like I don't know. If you look at experience of a game, because like people will say there's 3 different kinds of ways to experience a game or something like this. Like you play to the end credits, you play to 100% it, and then you play to like master it or whatever. Maybe that means speed running, maybe that means platinuming, depending on what it is. Maybe that means if it has an online or multiplayer element or leaderboards or challenge runs, whatever. People say that there's like a tiered experience to games or like a levels of experience, right? And for as much as like RPG gamers like to throw around that criticism about linearity, like, oh, this game sucks as linear, I feel like that criticism is a problem because it's like you're making it sound like experience is linear, and it's not, right? Like you had a really interesting experience with Lost Odyssey, Mikhail, where you were checklisting the game, and then you went back to it and were like, oh shit, I don't remember anything. That's a unique experience, right? Or most people who will 100% an RPG that's very dense will play through the story and then go back and do all the other things, right? So like, I feel like if you try to be too rigid, my TLDR here is, if you try to be too rigid, I feel like it ruins your holistic appreciation of a game.
Yeah, there's certain games that like there's always exceptions to all the rules, right? If I were to take Romancing Saga 2 as an example, you could beat that game from start to finish, and there's so many different pathways that you can take to get to that endpoint or that goal, depending on the way that you approach, which bosses you fight, how you build things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? If I were to roll credits on that game, there would be this creeping feeling in the back of my neck that I missed like 60% of the content still. And in the case of Romancing Saga 2 in particular, that game, I feel in order to get the full experience of it, you need to trophy hunt it because the trophies make you do so many
Yes.
wacky things that you would not otherwise do. So that's like one of the big exceptions. But I mean, like in the end, if rolling credits is what makes you happy, and if that's what makes you say you've completed a game, I'm 100% down with that either. Like no judgment from me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. The concept of, and this is why I think trophies or achievements are important because they bring some really cool mechanics possibilities, paths to light, right? So like Romancing Saga 2 is such a good example because the whole like skipping the final generation for the final emperor thing that you can do. Maybe you don't
Yes.
know that, or like what's her name, Coppelia, the robot thing, the automaton.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Capelia.
Yeah, she's in Reuniverse also, but yeah, I think some of that kind of stuff is really interesting, and maybe you don't really find out about that stuff until you look at the trophies or the 100%.
Oh, on
Mhm.
the flip side, if I may,
Yeah, yeah.
Romancing Saga 3, I
Mm,
feel the trophies were a detriment to that game because you have your 8 main and like protagonists, and they each have a trophy for completing the game, but their endings are kind of
it was the
negligible
same. Yeah.
between
Yeah.
like so like I had to sit through and beat that game with 8 different characters, thank God for New Game Plus,
Mhm.
but I mean, you could have done that in 2 or 3 playthroughs and I would have gotten the gist of it.
Yeah, they could have made it like beat the final boss with each of the 8 characters or something instead. And I
Yeah.
I I get why they did that, and but it came to me, that was an interesting trophy because it made me learn how to like kind of speed run that game, because I would just put on an album and I would be like, can I beat this game before the album and no, unless I think there's like a Godspeed album that's like 2 hours long that I probably could do it with, but like get as far as you can in it, right? And
Mhm.
I think that was cool, but yeah, that felt like a checkpoint, or not a checklist kind of
Yeah.
trophy, right? Like
Yeah.
just throw it in there, just fucking, yeah, we'll do it, yeah, people will do it, why not? And I mean, well, Saga Frontier has that too, but Saga Frontier's stories are also markedly different
Yeah.
compared to
Mhm.
RS3, that it feels more organic.
And
Right.
the
That's
bosses
something.
were all different. Sorry.
No, no. But that's just something that came to mind while we're talking about this is Frontier, where okay, you've got all these different stories, but their stories are different. Their final bosses are going to be different. You do get a lot of this repetition with the side content, but at the same time, you're not doing all that side content every single time.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like you're not doing well, I guess sometimes you are kind of doing the tarot or the rune quests. But yeah, you're not doing everything every single time, and I think that's like, you don't always have to get the shadow magic. You don't always have to uh recruit everybody, right? Um so yeah, no, I think that's cool. And I think man, I don't know.
Well, so something to maybe it's a segue.
Mm,
So we're
I
talking
believe in
about as
you.
far as the story here, and there are RPGs for me that the story means nothing, and I will completely skip the story and focus on it because I really like the gameplay. And this is one of the guilty pleasures for me is the Neptunia series.
Oh, you
I
said
skip
it. Wes is screaming
all.
right now.
I know, and I skip all of the dialogue in these games. I experienced a little bit of it with the first game, and I hated it. And but I love everything else. I love the way the battles work. I love the kind of crafting system or whatever that they have in it. And it's almost mindless in a way for me, but I had such a good time with it.
That's a really good kind of thing to bring up, because at that point then your end game, at least if you look at it that way, is just doing the things in the game, then right, playing the game rather than experiencing the story or whatever. uh
Right.
did you 100% Neptunia games?
The first one I did.
Interesting. Or is it just you didn't get around to the other ones yet, or are they like annoying to have to 100%?
Yeah, just timing. Like I didn't really feel like putting all that time into the other games.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't. Shane, what about you, man? What's any games like this that hit your funny bone?
Like so ones that I just enjoy the gameplay more than the story itself.
Mhm. Or yeah, or you're just playing for the gameplay.
Like I could name a whole bunch where like the story just isn't hitting particular notes. Like I said, I was playing the game. Well, I still am playing the game Knights of Azure. I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
but like I mean like the story to it is not very captivating. The night is spreading. You're a demon hunter, and you're in love with a girl. Go. That's basically it. There was no huge surprises, and like it did get to a point where I was trying to give it the time of day, and then at some point I was like, no, I think I understand exactly where this is going. Nothing's gonna surprise me.
Mhm.
So it just came to a point where I was just like skipping, not skipping scenes, but it was like skimming dialogue and just
Yeah.
clicking X as fast as I can. And I was like, I get it, I get the gist of it, that's fine. So like those do happen, but the mark of like a great game for me and a great RPG is that story needs to be like something extremely special to me. It's why I like FF10, it's why I like FF9, it's why I don't like Final Fantasy 15, because I feel like they
Mhm.
removed chunks out of it, and there's like so many choices they made in that game that, like, although I can appreciate a lot of the other things they did in the game, the camaraderie, the combat, the monster design, the way the world looks, how everything operates, like there's a lot of good in Final Fantasy 15. But I mean, like at one point, I think his name is Ravis. He
Yeah.
dies off screen, and he's got like the final sword that Noctis needs, and he's like, he leaves a note. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm dead. Here's my sword." And you're like,
Oh yeah,
"Thanks,
yeah. You're like, bro.
buddy. Awesome." So like, there's just some stuff that happens in FF15 that I'm not okay with. I thought it wasn't planned out, and that's a game where the story really suffered for me, and unfortunately, it's tarnished my whole view of Final Fantasy 15 as a whole.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah,
15 to me is I feel kind of the same. But I think sometimes if there's like a story beat or something that really resonates with me, I am able to put aside a lot of that stuff because I'm one of the few people who actually enjoy 15 story. I think what you just the anecdote that you mentioned is hilariously bad and short-sighted, but like as a whole, I think the game ends in one of the most emotionally affecting ways. I think
yeah,
the fucking weird pacing of the middle, I kind of like it, man. It's so disjointed. It's kind of it's such a mess that I almost like I feel like I have to pay attention to it more. I don't understand. I can't really qualify why.
yeah.
Um
There's still pieces that I love of it, like when he goes and he meets with Bahamut.
mhm.
I don't want to
Uh,
say that wrong. I do say Bahamut, but
I say Bahama too, but it's Bahamut. But
yeah,
yeah.
when he goes and meets with him, and then like Bahamut keeps his soul for 10 years or so.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved,
The Ocarina of Time moment.
yeah, I loved the feeling of when you get picked up by, I can't remember who picks you up in the truck, but somebody picks you up in a truck and they drive you from the south side of the continent to the north side of the continent, and you just see how much the world has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And I was like what a moment. So like I said, FF15 still has these great
It's got
moments,
moments. Yeah, yeah. It
but
really
yeah,
does.
yeah,
And
it's just,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't doubt. I don't slam anyone for disliking 15. You know, I totally understand. I think it's similar to 8 in a lot of ways because like 8 is also a complete mess, but I think 8 at least took chances. It was more experimental during its time than 15. Because
Yeah,
15 feels like it's simultaneously way too safe and also a fucking horrendous mess at the same time. Like it's just the weirdest thing. Sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to derail this topic, but I think that this maybe leads to a good question too. So when you played, because Mikhail, you also played FF15, I'm assuming.
I play well, I'll say I played about an hour of it. I
Oh no.
played about 7 hours of the uh de-evolved version on the
oh,
Switch.
the pocket
Oh,
version.
yeah, yeah.
But
I'm
I
curious.
have watched like the whole game on streams. So
Okay, gotcha. Interesting, interesting. So I guess this one's just for you, Shane, because I'm assuming that you platinum that game.
Yes,
You didn't get all the 100%, did you? Because that is an awful 100%. Because it
I did the platinum I got it during the launch, and I have the season pass for it. I played Gladio because it came out pretty quickly, but I fell off that game after that. So as far as the game goes in its launch version, I've platinumed that game.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did too. I played the DLC as well, the chapters, but I did not. Like, you have to play the fucking multiplayer.
Yeah, no thanks.
Um, but yeah, I was just curious about, because I feel like that's a good game, because to talk about this with, because the platinum doesn't really make you 100% that game.
They make you see a good chunk.
They make you see a good chunk, yeah.
Oh yeah, they don't expect everything.
Right, because that would be something. I do want to just jump back for a second, and I want to bring up something that Golden Drummer said in the chat, and I think it's a really, really, really concise way of talking about what is essentially at the heart of our discussion here. Which and maybe I'm wrong, but I think what we're fundamentally getting at here is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, right? So like when you talk about intrinsic motivation, you talk about something that you're doing because you're doing it because you want to experience it, or you want to like it's fulfilling or rewarding to you. And when you talk about extrinsic motivation, you're talking about rewards, or like physical trophies, digital trophies too. Some kind of achievement that's tangible or whatever, or you do it because you want to avoid a stimulus, whether that be punishment or praise or whatever. So I think at its heart, that's kind of like, I feel like some of this leans more toward extrinsic, right? Because we're talking a lot about tangible things, trophies, achievements. Yeah. But I think ideally, all of us might agree that the sweet spot is right in the middle, right? And I just noticed that the chat was fucked up. Lord have mercy on my soul. I just noticed this. Give me one sec. Oh, that sucks. So yeah, I think how do you guys feel about this? Like, do you think that the sweet spot is in the middle, or do you really think that you would, like, what's your ideal way to play games? Like, if you could, provided that like money was not an option, and I guess everyone has to deal with the economics of time, right? But provided that money was not an option and things were accessible on all platforms, what is your ideal way to play an RPG?
So, kind of what comes to mind here, because I saw Golden also mention Tales of Arise, and it took me a minute to like think about, well, how much did I actually play that game? And this is a good example of something that I got all the achievements in, and I don't even remember that. Like, it was just so much part of the experience that I was enjoying the game itself that I did, everything that was enough for me.
Yeah, and yeah, because Tales of Arise compare. Well, Shane, you said you hadn't played it, but if you're somebody who's familiar with 100%ing a Tales game, whether it
They're
be,
usually very difficult.
This one is not.
Mhm.
This is like
Yeah.
this is a free one comparatively. Like, there's no difficulty restrictions. There's nothing really challenge. You probably do everything on the easiest difficulty. I think. Pretty
I
sure.
don't think there was anything
Arise?
difficulty related, but
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and you could change it at any time. There's like it's kind of silly comparatively anyway. But yeah, no, I don't know, because it's like that game is a really good. So okay, and I'm going to quote what Golden said. I'm just going to read it out loud because it just makes more sense this way. He says he counts completing a game as if a game has an in-game journal thing that has stuff like some kind of in-game tracker, basically. To complete, he'll go as close to fully completing it as he can before he crosses the game off of his list, right?
That's a good way to do it.
Right. So That's interesting too, because again, I don't mean to like try to make this psych 101, but like you look at extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, that's still extrinsic. You're still using this metric to decide when you cross off the game, right? And I bring this up because I hate when people try to be holier than thou about achievements or trophies.
Oh no.
And I fucking can't stand that, because it's like I've gone through phases where I didn't give a shit about trophies or achievements. I still kind of don't. Like if I do something, I do it because I want to fucking do it. I don't do it because I want to show off my trophy. I do it because it's something that I enjoy or it's something that I want to do. And I feel like the people who are always like, trophies are shitty, they ruin games, they destroyed the way people interact with stuff, blah 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 blah, and then it's like, bro, you are still as extrinsically motivated to do stuff as people who hunt trophies, because you want to talk about like clout on social media, you want to talk about like to broadcast your experience. This is like what so many of these people do, and it's like, just take a look at the fundamental concepts of learning and like how you interact with media. And it's like, to be that like vehement against something, to me suggests a deep insecurity. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'd like to be wrong about that, but yeah, sorry, soapbox aside, I just wanted to,
I mean, that does come down to the, they're just games kind of idea.
exactly.
Yeah. And to
Exactly.
get that worked up over just this specific feature.
Yeah, like who gives a shit? It's like if somebody played Tales of Arise, I don't know what the easiest difficult. I'll just say very easy. Somebody played Tales of Arise and was like, "Oh, that was a good game." You know, to be like, "Oh, you didn't play it in the hardest difficulty." You know, would you really think that you've really been the Tale of Arise? Like, I think that's lame as fuck too, because it's like, I like hard games. I like challenging myself, but I'm not going to, what do you call it, like enforce my position on something like that unless somebody is like, oh, you didn't really play the game, or somebody who played it on very easy was like, that game was way too easy. It's like, bro, you played on the fucking easy.
That's my argument right there. Like Horizon 2 is my example for that one. It has a mode on it where you don't take damage whatsoever. And like that's fine if you want to play the game that way, that is your right to do so.
Mhm.
But if you play it on that mode and then you go out and you give your professional opinion on how that game is so easy and it provided no challenger whatsoever, then I'm probably going to say something like, well, if you don't take damage, where is the challenge coming from? Like, of course you didn't see challenge, you chose to play it that way.
Right,
But
right.
but I mean, like, it just ends there. I mean, like, whether you beat the game, you're still told the same story, you still see the same thing everyone sees, you just don't have the know-how of how you approach certain enemies in the game and how much damage they can do to you. So you're just missing one facet of it,
Yes.
which
Mhm.
isn't the biggest deal, but when people like get up on their high horse and talk about, like, if you're missing one whole facet of something and you're talking from a perspective of experience of how like much of a pro you are at that game, then I'm gonna probably shame you over
Yeah,
it a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But you're right to enjoy your games however you want,
Right,
really.
exactly. And I think you're talking about one facet of stuff. I'll bring this to my stupid thesis about intrinsic versus extrinsic, right? So like saying I'm just going to play this game on very easy is a very intrinsic thing, because that's the way you want to play it. And that's totally fine. I play Metal Gear Solid on easy because I fucking suck ass at it. Like, I love those games, but I'm not going to be like, well, this part was extremely easy. I had no trouble with it at all, because it's the game's it's a story mode. It's what fucking ever. But
Yeah.
like, so that's like an intrinsic thing, right? And you can't talk about extrinsic motivation, aka like some kind of achievement that I beat it on the hardest difficulty, or I beat a boss no damage, that kind of shit. You can't talk about that if this is all the way over fucking here, you know? And then it's the same way with extrinsic motivation. If you're playing a game just for trophies, and maybe you're sweaty, maybe you're a tryhard, and you're like, well, I don't really care about like the game story or how it really engages me. That's not the way that you play games. That's fucking just as backward because now you're speaking about this thing over here when you're all the way on this side of the spectrum. I don't know if you
Yes,
can see my gesticulation, but it's there.
I
Mhm.
I got a perfect example of this. So I am a trophy hunter, like brag, brag, brag. I've got 400 plus platinums, right?
Oh
Um,
shit, that's a lot. That's a lot more
the
than me.
I've been at it for quite a while, but like humble brag aside, the significant other, the better half, she plays Destiny 2, right?
Mhm.
She's got thousands of hours in that game. She's played all the DLCs. Like she downloads like all the new ones as they come out. She plays PvP. She plays PvE. She does it all in it, right? She's got 2 platinums. But if I were to ever take her on her playing field, like if I were to play Destiny against her or with her, I would
You
be
smoked.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, like, sure, I've got 400 like platinums, but that does not put me in any kind of position to say I'm better than you at X amount of games because I
Yeah.
have this. That's not true. Like, if you had somebody who could speed run Elden Ring in 5 minutes, I'd be like, oh, that took me like 120 hours. I can't compete. So
Hmm.
they're not
Yep.
a metric to decide on how good anybody is at gaming in general, but I do enjoy collecting them, and I've been tackling games like that before trophies even ever existed. Trophies are a new
Same, I
thing. They're
think.
like 2007, 2008, right? I mean, like,
Well, achievements, I think. Yeah, yeah, that sounds right. 2007, let's say. Yeah, that sounds like a good, a good year.
Yeah.
so somewhere around there. But I mean, like I beat Ozma in FF9. I beat Omega Weapon in Final Fantasy VIII. I wasn't getting trophies for these. I found something. I saw something. I said, "Hey, that thing beat the living daylights out of me. How do I take that down?" And there was no digital little pop like trophy pop for
Yeah.
me to do that. It's just
Yep.
sometimes you naturally see something and you're like, "I'm gonna do it." And I think, yeah, like I don't know how to tie that in some beautiful little bow, but there's parts of me that have been a trophy hunter even before trophies were a thing.
Yes, and that's a really good question. Mikhail, I'll throw this to you. When you played games as a kid, and I say this as a fellow um, elder millennial, uh, when you play games as a kid, how different is it, or just growing up in your teen years, whatever, little Mikhail versus older, which one, like where's the difference? Is there any difference? Is it the same? What's up?
So I feel like it's been a circle, really, that now I'm back to how I played games as a kid, where I'm going to try this, I'm going to see how far I get, and I might just drop it. I might just completely never come back to this game, and I'm okay with that. Whereas other games, it's like, I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to get all the achievements, so I'm going to try to do some sort of 100%. And again, for me, I'm going back and playing, some of these games that, okay, I never got around to. Seeing people play Ease on stream here, I had never gotten around to one of the original Ease 4 either, version. So I think a few days after they were done, I ended up just loading it up, playing through it. And I played it exactly how I would have, as a child as well.
Wait, this is a good. This is actually kind of interesting to me too. For nostalgia, do you think that like nostalgia ties into the way that you play a game because it's something that you are more comfortable with or reminds you of playing games back in the day?
For me, I would say it ties more to what the game is like the specific game systems or even the genre. Like I know with um, dungeon crawlers, I always end up just playing them very similarly.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the tried and true. I play every Souls like the same way. You know, like
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just roll. I'm just gonna rely on the dodge. I'm not gonna parry. That's just the way I do it. And I hit a problem with that in Valkyrie Elysium because you can play that game just fine on hard while playing it like a Souls game, right? but the game really rewards a different type of gameplay. It has this like strange orb. Did you guys play this? I forgot.
I haven't played Elysium. No.
I ordered it for like pre-ordered on PC and forgetting that, oh yeah, you have to wait an extra month or two or whatever.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, there you go. Actually, it's funny enough. Frank says you better friggin' parry, son. Well, in Elysium, actually, I did parry, but the thing is the game has this interesting orb system where if you use this skill that absorbs the orbs, these orbs that come out from dodging, parrying, hitting enemies with a certain thing, you can do like a big attack that's way more efficient than just like waiting for openings each time and parrying them. I mean, granted, if you're insanely good at that game, you can just do both effortlessly, but that's like a different level, right? Like you're sweat incarnate at that point. But that fucked me up a little bit because I had to adjust differently. So is there ever a time for you, Shane, where you feel like you have a sort of heuristic or copy pasta approach to playing certain games?
I would definitely say yes. Even the games that I like see trailers for, if they hit a certain amount of boxes, I'm excited for it. Like when Octopath was first announced, I was like, pixel art, turn based, looks like Bravely Default, has the same mechanics. I was like, I'm sold. Absolutely sold on this. As somebody that played Final Fantasies like, 1 through 6, you kind of see things in a certain style and you're like, I'm pumped for that, whatever it is. And as of right now, I think Sea of Stars is the only one that's really nailing that home for me. Although Octopath 2 looks pretty good too. Speaking of which, I know that you describe yourself as an HD 2D skeptic.
I was hoping you would bring this up.
And I wanted to find out a little information about this because Octopath does kind of look a little funny sometimes, but I find that Team Asano has been getting exponentially better and better at making that style work. So
Okay.
like, what's to be skeptical?
All right, so Mikhail, I'm so sorry, man, because you have heard me talk about this ad nauseum. So I just like, but I want to throw this to you. You know what? I'll throw this to you first. You answer that question. How do you feel about HD 2D? And then I'll answer it so I don't feel like I'm stepping on anyone's toes.
So overall, I do enjoy like the visual look of it. And kind of the same thing, I think they're getting better and better at what they can do with it. Even so with Octopath 2, I don't know if either of you caught the kind
The
of
direct.
more recent, not just trailer, but like they actually showed off gameplay.
Yeah.
And they showed off the beginning, like introduction of the kind of samurai guy.
Yes.
And it's not just this flat world anymore. They actually have the camera moving and panning and still maintaining, that look.
Hmm. But how does that make you feel?
I mean, that made me feel pretty good, honestly.
All right, so I'm gonna try to keep this concise, and we're gonna try to roll with that. Do I hate HD 2D as in a vacuum? No, not really. What I'm skeptical about is using that homogenization, the homogenized art style of HD 2D to do everything. If I see one more motherfucker say, remake Chrono Trigger in the HD 2D engine, it's not a fucking engine. Secondly, no, not everything needs to be remade in this. Like, okay.
Do you not think that that's where they're going with it, though? Do you not think that Chrono Trigger is going to be the crowning achievement of HD 2D?
You know what? No, because I think Chrono Trigger is a really good example of why it wouldn't work, is I don't think that style works very well with Toriyama's Chrono Trigger designs and with the strides.
That's fair. Did you play Dragon Quest XI? You must have, right?
Yeah, I've played every Dragon Quest.
When I saw Dragon Quest XI and I saw the characters combining their moves and stuff in that game, I said, this is what a Chrono Trigger remake needs to look like.
Okay, 11? Yeah, I see that because it reminded me a lot of the fan project Chrono Trigger Resurrection or whatever it was called.
I remember.
I actually could see that because I think that did a lot of justice with Toriyama's design. I mean, at the end of the day, my thing is don't remake Chrono Trigger, just give us a better port. But like that being said, not everything needs to be remade in this style. Triangle Strategy, good example of a game that uses HD 2D in a good way because it's the battles in that game, the tactics style of gameplay is really conducive to HD 2D. You can see things in a 3D environment while also having sprites. It's clean, etc., etc. Octopath, I kind of hate how it looks. The sprites are gorgeous, but I just make it fucking 2D. It doesn't need to be HD 2D. Live Alive, okay? Love this game. Beautiful game. Didn't need to be HD 2D. And the
I
best...
thought it worked.
It works, yeah. It's not like it does. See, this is my problem. This is my issue with it. It's a slippery slope. You let these fucking SJW... No, I'm kidding. but it's okay. It works fine, but it doesn't. The best parts of Live Alive are the parts that didn't use the 3D to me, and this is just a preference, but I do think that there is a danger and a boringness to reusing the same art style for so many different things. And
that's true.
I feel like that's what plagued the Pixel remasters too, because they all use the same tile sets and whatever, so 1 through 6 all look the same. And
oh no.
And that's what I mean, not entirely. There's definitely variance. I'm speaking kind of a little bit too fatalistic. But
I'm holding out for a console release, so I don't know much about the Pixel remasters. I'm still gunning for the console release, but just knowing that, because FF1 through FF6 all had varying art styles, and to hear that they kind of cut that corner sounds very disappointing.
Yeah, no, it works for 1 through 3 a little because those games all had very similar UIs and stuff. And but yeah, no, I mean, I feel like blindly embracing everything. And here, Yayuko joined just for my HD 2D rant. But like, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't need to be something that's like super ubiquitous, right? Like, and I'm a little hesitant or skeptical about Dragon Quest 3 because of that. Like, I don't know. It looked okay in the screenshots. I'll have to actually play it, but like, I'm just like, if we get Treasure Hunter G or Treasure of the Rudras or like even
Bahamut's Lagoon.
Bahamut Lagoon. Okay, so Bahamut Lagoon. I think that could actually make HD 2D work. I'll still be annoyed by it because it's like, bro, you have this opportunity to do something else. But like at the end of the day, as long as the game gets more exposure, that's all that really matters to me, right? Like, even if my dog is going crazy, I'm sorry. Even if Live Alive was made with claymation, which I hate, it makes me physically ill. Even if it was made with claymation, which I don't think any real, I can't think of too many games that were, but just something I hate, I would still. Oh, Clay Fighter, yeah.
That's the only one I can think of.
It's weird, but if it's just something I hate, I would still be happy that people play it. They would play it. So despite my haterisms, I'm not like I don't know. I'm not a full-blown hater. I'm just hater leaning, if that makes sense.
Hey, the more people that play Live Alive, the better, in my opinion. That game was like lightning in a bottle.
It's a really good game. It's a great game, and I'm really glad that people finally get to experience it. And you know, like, I feel like for a while that was a game that people would Wikipedia and say that they played. And I'm glad that now that people can actually.
Yeah.
You still can, I guess, but
so we do have, some other games that aren't getting that sort of thing, like the Suikoden remasters. Like, they're not doing anything like that, and those, for the most part, are looking really good.
They're not even blurring the pixels on the Suikoden remasters.
Yeah, the backgrounds though. Oh, that's my issue. Yeah. They look a little too, but I mean, compared to a lot of other remasters, I think this is one of the better looking ones. and
Yeah.
maybe even more so than Romancing Saga 2 and 3, because Romancing Saga 2 and 3 did the blending thing. The UIs of those games, oh, I hate it. It's the only real
Yeah.
negative thing.
I do like the backgrounds though in the remasters.
Oh, you're talking like the battle backgrounds?
Romancing sagas. Yeah, the battle
Yeah,
backgrounds.
no, those are
Mhm.
fine. I think they're okay. I just don't like the sprites being so clean. You know, like
Yeah.
um,
They kind of looked chunky because of that new style. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. They like widened them or something.
yeah, shit. So we are actually winding down a little bit here. We are getting toward the last little bit here. One last question, not to interrupt or interject. The thing about this podcast is that I feel like I've always had this issue is that like the time just passes. You know, like it just I didn't even look at the clock and here we are. So I do want to ask one last question before we start wrapping up, and it's is there any are there any 100% or full completion in an RPG that you guys are especially proud of? And Mikhail, we will start with you.
Start with me. Um, I mean, that's one of those things that I was kind of, thinking about a bit and struggling to find anything. Because, like, even as far as Tales of Arise, was that last year or was that this year?
I think it was time is a flat circle,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah.
I don't
But
know.
but so I mean, I played that when it came out, and I mean, obviously,
21.
I did all the achievements, but I didn't even remember that I 100% it. And while checking that, I noticed as well, like, Trials of Mana had come out, you know, 2 years ago or so now, and I did the same thing. Like, I actually played through that 3 times, and just had a great time. Did all the achievements. So I would have to like dig through my history to see like, okay, I beat this RPG. Did I 100% it?
Hmm.
And then I'd be like, start to remember, oh yeah, I did all this and this, and okay, maybe I'd be pretty proud of that. But just to come up with that, I'm really not sure.
To put you on the spot even more, uh, maybe a question that might be a little easier to answer for you. What's the last game that you like 100%ed or completed to your own degree that you really loved? That's gonna stick with you for a long time.
Um, I would probably say Crystal Project. I know it's had a lot of, it's had updates, it had tweaks to it, but I did play it at the beginning, so there was a lot of not necessarily brokenness, but a lot higher difficulty. There was a lot more I had to struggle to figure out, well, how am I going to beat this boss when I die on the second turn? That sort of thing.
Gotcha. Um, so one other thing I've been trying to do with these podcasts is have everybody recommend each other something that they have not played. And Crystal Project, I'm putting words in your mouth. Crystal Project seems like that game seems like your contribution to this. At least I'm taking it
Uh,
as that.
yeah, I will. I will. I've recommended it quite a few times in places that I feel like even when people are receptive, it's like, oh yeah, I have that on my list and I'm really looking forward to it. And then here's this other game that they buy, day one for full
Mm-hmm.
price, and it's like, okay, you're really not that into my recommendation.
Yeah, that's the fucking struggle. I try not to take that personally. It's like one of those things, like
Hmm.
shit just happens, Romancing Saga Minstrel Song comes out and you're like, oh, I guess I'm playing that for 3 months. All right, see you
Yeah.
guys. So Shane, I'll throw this to you, man. What's a 100%, and you can open it up to other games if you want, but if you can keep it to RPGs, what's an RPG that you 100%ed that you're really proud of?
So there was a game on the Vita called Oreshika Tainted Bloodlines. It is a
Oh, I've heard of this.
JRPG.
Never played it.
It's you get cursed by a god in it, and your characters, they age super fast. They become like prime adults within like a year or two, and then they die within 5 years. And you're always trying to like have this flow of new battle ready people, like a team of battle ready people at that age and die out within 5 years, and then you pass the stats on through the generations. It's kind of like Romancing Saga 2 in a sense, but it's way more active. Like you need to be always concentrating on who you want to be as your combat party, who you want to pass the skills on before they die, and then have a rotation of infants that are growing into their prime to be able to fight as well. Super complicated game. Extremely hard because of those mechanics, plus the RPG itself and the bosses and the enemies are very brutal as well. So although I wouldn't like go and recommend it as one of the greatest games I've ever played, it was one of the hardest JRPGs I think I've ever beaten and gotten the platinum for. So I just want to brag about that one if you don't mind.
No, go for it. That's what it's there for.
So yeah, that one was like absurdly difficult, and yeah, when I popped the platinum on it, like what a weight that was lifted off my shoulders. As for games that I would recommend, I mean, The Messenger is probably one of my favorite games from the last generation. It really left a good mark on me, and I also getting the platinum for Romancing Saga 2 makes you see that game in so many different like lights that it's already a great game and you should play it. But if you do play it, you should try to go for the platinum because it will teach you things you didn't think you would ever know.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think that's a I mean, I always kind of like thought that, but I never really like try to articulate it, you know, or like outside of in discourse in any way. So I'm really glad that you did that because we need more Saga people here in general. So
yeah, Saga's great.
I will piggyback off of your recommendation, and I will say play Saga Scarlet Grace if you have not. Mikhail, did you play Scarlet Grace? I forgot.
Briefly, I think you were around when I made the comment that I picked the wrong starting character.
You did, yes,
and
I
had
remember
no
that, yeah.
idea what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Saga Scarlet Grace. I think everybody listening to this podcast or just hanging out or whatever, do it. I swear to God, it's one of those games that like you'll see right away what its scope is, what it's trying to do, even if you don't understand all its components at first. You'll see what the flow is like and what can be done with a game like that. And I think it's one of the best. It's sort of like marinated in my head for like 2 years after I played it. And I think it's one of the best JRPGs of this generation, if not maybe I don't know. Maybe that's hard to say. But because like as a whole, maybe it's a little like the story is great. The side stories are great. The vibe is cool, but I don't know if the story hits the high points that a lot of other modern RPGs strive toward. But either way, gameplay wise though, holy shit. And that game is not easy. It respects you, but it also like it's tough love, you know? It's like it lets you make your own mistakes. So
Saga's very mean.
So yeah, usually very mean. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up that whole segment. Mikhail, you did say you have a take on 3D platforming in the chat.
Oh no, that was as far as Crystal Project.
Okay,
Crystal Project has a neat take on 3D platforming, while also having that turn-based RPG combat.
Oh, okay.
With jobs.
Is it on everything?
I think it's only PC.
It's only PC. I'm one of those console plebs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks like it's only on Steam, but only $13. I just don't know when I'll play it. That's my only thing.
Yeah.
Deck verified. There you go. That's the next agenda. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm sorry if we didn't get to sort of talk about every little thing. It's just the nature of having introductory elements to a podcast. But I really appreciate you guys joining me. It's been a lot of fun. As always, I try to get people who I think would be really good fits on this show, and I have not been disappointed at all. You guys are great. Love all y'all. If you want to go around and plug some of your socials, I'll put it in the Twitch chat too for people So, Mikhail, we'll start with you again. Any social that you want to plug?
Just the Twitter, the other under my other former kind of screen name that I went by. That I do pronounce that as Shadows,
Oh,
kind of
that's
a
how you.
play on
Okay.
shadows. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, yeah, I put it in the thingy there. And Shane, if you want to go ahead and plug anything in particular.
Definitely find and follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Roxas and Untamed. And I am always on Twitter. I love talking games at Roxas Boxes. Roxas your Boxes.
There you go. Cool.
Also, thank you. This has been an honor.
Oh, dude,
Just
thank
wanted
you.
to
Yeah.
throw that
Also,
out
yeah.
there.
Thank you guys. That's another really good segue. Like we've said in the intro here, the whole point of these like introductory podcasts, every time you first jump on an RPG podcast, my thing is to kind of keep a topic nebulous, just to kind of get a feel for everything, kind of get out some of the conversational knots that you may have been working up. Because I feel like one trend I've noticed a lot with people who come on the show is like, fucking love talking about RPGs, and sometimes you don't always have the outlet to, right? So I think it's a nice little palate cleanser. But the goal here is to host this podcast every Wednesday at 7 p.m. But in the future, maybe do a little bit more. Maybe do twice a week. Maybe do these general episodes once a week, and then more specific topics. We plan to have rotating guests always. Anyone who's interested in chatting about RPGs, if you have not been on the podcast, please join our Discord, which I will put a link in. I don't know why. You should just have a Discord. I don't really know the command for it because I'm a boomer. But yeah, here's a Discord link. If you guys are interested in joining or jumping on the podcast at any time, let me know. There's always we could always make something work. And in the future, hopefully, we'll get more specific topics, reviews, analysis, more in-depth stuff, maybe more produced elements. And yeah, see us next week. I believe we have God, who do we have next week? I think Kelly is on next week, as well as I forgot who else. Oh, that's a surprise actually. Keep that we'll keep that under wraps. But yeah, so yeah, thank you guys again so much for joining me, and thanks for chat and everyone else for listening. If you're watching the VOD, if you're in the Twitch chat, if you're on Discord, thank you guys so much. And Shane, Kyle, you guys are the best. So hopefully we'll see you around sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Fuck Tales of Hysteria.